The breaking news tonight, sources are telling CNN that former Attorney General William Barr pushed investigators to finish a probe that included secret subpoenas on House Democrats perceived to be enemies of then-President Trump. The subpoenas extended to some staff and even family members, as well as some members of the news media. Let's get some more on all of this. Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois is joining us. He was in today's Intelligence Committee briefing on the matter. He's a member of that important committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Earlier in the day, you said this, and I'll quote you. You said, "I assumed a hostile government would do something like this. I just didn't think it would be our own hostile government." How egregious was this intrusion?
You know, this is pretty bad. Members of Congress, there's a clause in the Constitution that allow us a little more leeway in free speech. This is a direct assault on that and the separation of powers. And I also think when this is all said and done, I think it will be viewed as a greater assault on the working press of our country. So it is of great concern, and we have to sort this out and find some accountability. Well,
you were briefed on the scope of the operation earlier today. What else can you share from that briefing?
Well, I think what I learned is there's a lot more to learn, and I am assuming that this Justice Department will fully cooperate with the Inspector General's investigation. But I'm also hoping that I've heard the Senate Judiciary Committee wants to bring Mr. Sessions and Mr. Barr before them and question them under oath. I'm also hoping that the current Justice Department will come forward and give us far more details of exactly what they know about what took place.
Well, the Inspector General, the Inspector General at the Justice Department is launching an investigation.
Sure, but those investigations, as you know, can take some time. It would be nice for members of Congress, particularly those who were targeted and the committees they serve on, to get information in the meantime to know what took place. Plus, we understand, we were told, it was in the article, that this investigation was closed. Here's a fair question. Is it completely closed or just closed as it relates to members of Congress? Obviously, again, the press was targeted as well.
And you say what was going on as far as the press is concerned was even worse than was going on involving these two members of the House Intelligence Committee. Did I hear you right?
No, I just think that's quite possible, given Chairman Schiff talked about how broad this was, how it was viewed as a fishing expedition. And I think what he's alluding to is that there seems to have been a lot of people on this targeted list, and I'd surmise that a great number of them are members of the working press. They were looking for leaks. Obviously, they weren't just going to look at members of Congress.
Well, were there others that have not yet been publicly identified? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's a great question. I would say that Apple's process of notifying members was less than sufficient. So what's going to be taking place in the next several days is the discussions with Apple, given the numbers of other members of the committees, who else might have been targeted as well.
Do you know if you personally were targeted?
I have no idea, and again, we are now in a process where we're asking through the committee to communicate with Apple as far as who else was on this list. But again, a shortcut to that might be the Justice Department telling us in the meantime.
Yeah. Would you worry that this is just what they say, the tip of the iceberg, that former President Trump weaponized the Justice Department in ways we're only now beginning to understand?
Absolutely. And I think if you just look at open sources, you can discern that. I mean, look at the work they did with Stone and General Flynn, pressuring the Justice Department to work on the sentences for those two. And the charges on those two, and the fact that Attorney General Barr acted as almost additional counsel for the president, if not his press secretary, when the Mueller investigation report came out. We've heard the White House doing this with other issues. Reports of Mr. Meadows pressuring the Justice Department on the election lie. What else is out there? If they've got rogue actors, it's hard to imagine they weren't just in the Justice Department. Where else were there? I think we need a 4-year damage assessment.
Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois, thanks so much for joining us.